So according to the PS5 rumor mill, it really looks like the PS5 is not going to have one of the biggest flaws that the PS4 currently has. So one of the biggest flaws that the PS4 currently has is that the fact that when you use the PS4 could actually sound like a jet engine, especially if you're on the PS4 Pro. That thing does have a little bit more horsepower than the base PS4 or the PS4 Slim, of course, and a lot of times they just start to heat up. They don't start to dissipate heat right, and the fact that Sony didn't really pay for the proper cooling for that thing. Of course, it's not like a lot of PS4s are overheating to where they're actually having an extreme problem, because if you look at something like the PS4 line, of course, there's not a mass recall, or there's not a lot of people complaining that their systems are overheating, but just the fact that a lot of PS4s nowadays do start to sound like jet engines. Hell, my base PS4 that I currently have hooked up does sound like a jet engine. It really does prove that the PS4's design was absolutely a flaw. Not only was it a flaw to actually make it in that body and that shape, also they didn't pay for the proper cooling. I mean, the cooling is enough to make sure the system actually runs, but it's not the best cooling. And when you get things like debris in there, when you get things like all this junk stuck in your PS4 and the fans just not being the best, and on top of that, the design of the PS4 is just not the best, then that's where the system really starts to have problems, and that's why, particularly why your PS4 system actually starts to sound like a jet engine. But it looks like Sony is actually trying to figure out the situation with the PS5, and they're actually trying to figure out what they want to do when it comes to cooling the PS5. That's kind of why when you look at something like the upcoming Xbox, the Xbox Series X, it's kind of like a PC tower instead of a box that's like this, kind of like the Xboxes before it are kind of like the PlayStations before it. They're really trying to figure out the situation, because you guys know with next-gen consoles, they're going to be playing games more closer to 4K or at 4K now, since those things are going to be very beefy consoles when they actually comes out. So I can see why something like Microsoft wanted to really make sure that the Xbox Series X was really going to be very heat sufficient and make sure that it was going to be cooled properly. They had to go with something like a tower, kind of like a gaming PC, where all the heat's going to be coming out of the top of it to really dissipate the heat. And I can see Sony actually doing a really crazy design for the PS4. You guys may remember when they actually leaked the dev kits for the PS4. The dev kits looked kind of like a spaceship, and a lot of people didn't like the design of that. But they probably did that to make sure that the heating for the PS4 was going to, or excuse me, they wanted to make sure that the heating for the PS5 was actually going to be significantly better, and make sure that it wouldn't overheat, and make sure it would be quiet as possible. That's really the biggest problem with the PS4, is the fact that it's not really cooled the best, and a lot of times after ages it just starts to really get it just really starts to get very noisy, and it's really not a fun situation where you're playing your PS4 and your PS4 is starting to sound like a jet engine. There should be no case to where your PS4 is sounding that loud in operation, especially when you're playing a disc-based game, and especially when you're trying to maybe stream or maybe record a video, and it's just annoying how loud the PS4 can get at times. So it is going to be very interesting to see what Sony does with the PS5 in terms of design and in terms of what type of cooling they're actually going to go for the PS5. And honestly, I really do hope this time around, when we actually get our hands on something like the PS5, it's not going to sound loud over time. I mean, sure, when you get your PS4, it's not going to be loud, but over time it starts to get loud, and that's really the problem here. And honestly, I am one person, as we speak right now, I am okay if Sony wanted to do something like the same design they did with the dev kits for the PS5. If they want to make it like a spaceship looking design, as long as it cools the system properly, I'm okay with something than your standard traditional like PS4 design, Xbox One design. I am okay if it does look different, because hey, all that really matters at the end of the day is you can actually play your games and make sure the system is cooled properly, and make sure that it doesn't sound like a freaking jet engine when you're actually using this system. So I am excited for next gen hardware, and I'm also excited to see that Sony is actually trying to understand that they didn't actually cool the PS4 properly. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.